So we are a couple minutes in. So I'll just do a quick little introduction as to, what's happening. So welcome alphas, welcome whitelisters, anyone that's coming in from any other project. We're super excited to have you guys here and have you guys listening in. Today we have on Alpha Talks Ann Curtin. Now, Kim is someone who's become a friend of mine over the last year or so, and she is the Wall Street coach. Now, Kim coaches hedge fund managers, top traders, and Fortune 500 executives. She's the author of Transforming Wall Street, which is an incredible book, by the way, which we're going to touch on later. So I just wanted to welcome you, Kim, and thank you so much. Obviously, as well as you, Martin, thank you for being here.
Alpha traders here.
So good.
Awesome. So, do you mind introducing yourself, Kim, to the audience and let us know a little bit about your history, and I'll just let you take it away.
Okay. I have an eclectic history, but ultimately what I do today is try to help executives and traders, investors at being more self-aware. Our focus at the Wall Street Coach is emotional intelligence. We teach high performance that doesn't burn you out. That's the heart of what we try to do with people. We feel that a lot of success in business, be it trading, be it investing, be it career trajectory over a lifetime, is going to be based on how self-aware you are. I personally have had I've done a lot of work on myself. I worked with a therapist at a very young age because of the household I grew up in. It was, a little bit uneven, and I felt I needed some tools about how to navigate that environment. And having those tools they've made all the difference. And at some point, probably now, I've been a coach 15 years, so probably about 17 years ago, I hired a coach for the first time, which I found to be incredibly different than therapy. And I found it to move much faster and to be much more of a glass half full experience. It approached all of the places that perhaps I was operating in my life in a costly way. It helped me reduce the cost, learn new tools without shaming myself, without making myself feel bad or wrong or like broken. It felt much more uplifting and empowering and encouraging. And because of that experience, I decided to become a coach, which, I did have no plan prior to this coaching experience to do. And then once I came out of finance, before I hired the coach, I worked in finance for almost 10 years. And so after that experience, I was like, wow, who do I want to do this with? And because I really felt those in the world of finance were sort of unique, and I understood their kind of challenges, I thought my work would probably be best served there. So that's how it started. But I started 2006, which was probably like halfway through the year. The signs of the 2008 crisis were afoot, and I was not getting any business. So I walked away from a very healthy salary at a hedge fund, started my own business. I was a year and a half into it. And I was like, we have a situation, because I'm not getting any work because everybody stopped spending. So I was like, now what do I do? And so I decided I had two friends who were very encouraging. And I was like, look, this is what I'm born to do. Even if I have to eat ramen noodles, I'll do it. Like, I have to coach. And so the first place that I wound, my friend said, give the coaching away. Do it for free if you have to. Just coach and get a part-time gig to pay the bills, which is what I did. And the first place I went happened to be outside the stock exchange. So I sat outside the New York Stock Exchange with a sign like Lucy from the Peanuts that said, the coach is in, instead of the doctor is in. The Peanuts was a cartoon strip for all you young ones. Back in the day, she used to have one that said the doctor is in, and people go to her for advice. So I sat there in a really fancy suit, And it just happens to be October 7th, 2008. That was the date the market did crash. And so for 1 year, I sat on that bench and coached people, including floor traders, secretaries, bike messengers, executives. Like everybody was like, you know, in a crisis, and they just needed somebody to talk to. So had it not been then, I don't know if it would have taken off, but it took off then. So I had, you know, a line of people sometimes waiting for 20 minutes of free coaching. And this journalist interviewed me, 8 journalists interviewed me, but 1 journalist wrote an article, and in it, he called me the Wall Street coach, because, you know, I was sitting on Wall and Broad for a year at lunchtime, and I was like, hey, that's a really good name. So I went to GoDaddy.com, bought it for $8. Wall Street coach now is trademarked. So that's how it all got started.
Awesome. And now that you have a full-fledged coaching business, can you tell us a little bit about some of the kind of more the high profile clients and type of people you work with, and what do you do that provides so much value to them?
Well, most of the clients, when they come into us, the first thing we do with them is an assessment. We call it either an executive positioning index or a trader positioning index. And that allows, first of all, the client themselves and us to get a really good temperature gauge on where they are now. This is a very unusual assessment. It's not a personality assessment. It's not an IQ assessment. It allows a client to determine what and how their judgment is operating. How, regardless of our personality, our judgments, how we evaluate the choices we make, has often been where our blind spots show up. So this assessment allows a person to see exactly where their evaluations, how appropriately gauged that vision on their judgment is. And that gives people incredible feedback. Most people would turn around and say, this isn't shocking. It's just shocking to see it in black and white, to have it in front of me. I'd say most self-aware people suspect that this might be the case. And it also allows an individual to see where they stand on the work side versus the self side, and helps them see where they might be overly critical for themselves, where they may not be having enough big picture. You know, especially people who have a really strong work ethic, they can have a tendency to just work and not stop and look at the big picture. Sometimes just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that we find with people, a lot of people who are in finance, be it traders or investors, they usually are people who can work really hard, but that isn't always in your trading account's best interest or in your personal life. So it's a barometer of self-awareness. And then we also would go into something called a discovery packet. We send every client for them to say to us, because they set the agenda. Remember, coaching is different than therapy. Coaching allows you to be the expert of where you want to go. And having somebody hold you accountable to what you determine is the your destination is very powerful. Having accountability is very powerful. Having somebody neutral in your corner, very powerful. Our loved ones, God bless them, they can't be neutral. Why? Because they want what's best for us. They say, I want you to be happy. Well, sometimes happy isn't what is going to get us over the line. If somebody has a goal that they set for themselves, while you're, doing your sit-ups, you're rarely happy, while you're learning what you have to learn. You're not necessarily happy, but it's work that has to get done. So you can't expect loved ones to be like, suck it up, go through that mud and climb underneath the barbed wire, because they're worried about us. So to have somebody neutral in your corner who's like, look, is that the goal you set for yourself? Then you're going to get up at 4 a.m. and you're going to do this, and I'm going to hold you accountable to it because you told me that's what you want for yourself.
It sounds like my wife a little bit. Don't have that problem, I guess.
So just to give a little bit of context as well, Kim, you've over time started to become quite well known for hard truths and bringing people those hard truths. And I often joke with my girlfriend anytime that I'm gonna listen to you or you know, speak with you or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's always the same feeling of like, I actually don't like talking to Kim or want to talk to Kim or even listen to her, because every time I'm like, God damn it.
So sorry.
But it's so funny. But it's as you said, like it's such an incredible transformation having to, like you said, like there's some things that we want to do that might not be the best thing for us.
Right.
And you know, our personalities are geared towards certain things, and
We're
it's
geared
something
towards comfort. We're geared towards comfort, and there's nothing wrong with comfort. Like, I'm an advocate for comfort, but in proportion to what you want to create for yourself. And remember too that even like you speaking to, like, I don't really want to listen to Kim, but I know I need to listen to Kim. Like, but your self-awareness to realize, ooh, she's saying things that make me uncomfortable. You get to take the dial around how often you listen to me, how often, because we can't always be in the hard truths. And that's another thing too, I think I want to speak to, because I'm going to guess that the majority of the people listening to us, they may very well be too hard on themselves. They may very well constantly give themselves exposure to hard truths, but that can be imbalanced too. You also have to, and yes, I do deliver hard truths, but I think if you spoke to most of my clients, they also would say I'm incredibly encouraging. There's a time for each, but for a lot of those who are young, hungry, want to have great success, they have a tendency to, here's the word of the day, people, grind. But the grinding is great, and it can be overdone, and it's not necessarily in healthy proportion. Remember that quote, I don't know if you guys and I talked about this, but the book that's out there about burnout right now has a great quote that says, when you work more than 50 hours a week, the production that you deliver beyond 55 hours doesn't change. The ceiling is 55 hours, people. You want to go 70 and think you're going to work so much better cognitively? Nah, you shut out at 55. So you've got to ask yourself, I'm grinding. Is that actually cognitively giving me the best outcome? Probably not. So time for hard truths, time for encouragement. And if you don't have both, and you're not kind of self-aware enough to realize both are needed, then, it's just potentially a costlier, more challenging ride
than it needs to be. Me and you, Martin, need to probably face some hard truths.
You might need to work hours. So, Kim, so I want to try to break it down for people that are really interested in getting into trading. And I think a lot of people are always focused on the strategies, learning how, where to sell your stops and how to do your risk management. And a lot of times perhaps undervaluing the importance of the psychological aspect of trading. What do you think, in your experience, what are the key traits you see from people that become long-term successful traders? What are those secret ingredients that you can pick out from the pros that separate them from amateur traders or people that burn out?
I think it would be that did you go to say something?
I was just going to follow along with that, in the fact that I was just going to mention your book, where for Martin's question, you really do have like the broad knowledge of the answer to that question, because in your book you interview so many top traders. So I was just going to highlight
thank you.
A little bit of promo, because it's focused around that question that Martin answered. I think it's a great question.
I mean, I have 5 practices that I advocate to all of my clients, whether they're traders or not, and those are 5 practices that facilitate self-awareness, consciousness. But I think specific to traders, and they're applicable to traders, and I can talk about them as much as you want me to. But I think for the successful traders across the board, their realistic expectation of this being a long game. The ones that are able to go the distance, or not that, even if you read Jack Schwaker's book, Market Wizards, there are plenty of traders who have hiccups along their development. However, they all come from this perspective of, I am in this for the long haul. I am not looking for a quick, cash grab. If you have that to begin, this is the most competitive game in the world. Like, if you think you're going to come in here in 6 months and just like kill it, you are delusioned. You're in a delusion. So see it as a long game. It's going to take a lot of the strategy alone side of things is going to take you a long time. And if you don't have this sense of self-awareness and ability to be with your mistakes, that's going to get in your way as well. That level of part of the long tail game means you have to realize you're human. This is a very potentially emotionally volatile landscape. You got to realize that your emotions, whether you want to have them or not, are going to hijack you at times. Isn't it better that you begin to ask yourself and get to know who you are? How do you respond when a guy cuts you off on the road? Do you handle that neutrally, or do you get triggered? Welcome to what's going to show up in your trading. When your wife tells you forgot the milk and she actually forgot to tell you, do you snap back at her, or do you say, I'll go get it? These are all the little windows into how you're going to show up when you've got lots of money on the line and your ego is so invested in that thousands of hours you've put into something. If you see your self-worth meshed with how your trading's doing, it's not going to be a happy ending. So these are all the places that you got to look at. How am I showing up in my life? How have I done when I've walked into something as a babe in the woods before? Was I very uncomfortable being unfamiliar with the environment? I've also noticed very academically trained people have a tendency to struggle. Why? Because they were rewarded for being right. This market sometimes rewards you for being lucky, not right. Like that, you just can't expect the market to be the way the rest of, some of your career choices maybe were. It can look a lot like life, but you got to see, is my life, if I got A's all through college and now I have nothing but F's for 3 years of my trading account, if your sense of self-worth is going to be demoralized by that, that's going to cost you, because you want to be right. And being right isn't always what's going to serve you in the market.
It's something that I mean, for starters, I couldn't agree more. And it's something I know that you're not actively in the NFT game yet, but with the stock market, people come in with the expectation of getting rich quick.
Yeah.
And then with the crypto market, people come in ×2 with that attitude.
Totally.
Now the NFT market is ×50.
I believe it.
There's a lot of people that and a lot of projects and a lot of these businesses that are running where people are getting, making millions and millions and millions of dollars, essentially overnight. And it's something that I'm seeing a lot of already. And it's one of the first reasons why I reached out to you, because I was like, I know this is what you preach. And already, like, I'll be in Twitter spaces all day and seeing these kind of things, and it's people coming in using the $500 that they have left to their name and just like throwing it and looking for that quick buck.
That's a lottery mindset. That's like, I've got no money left. Let me go down to the gas station on the corner and buy my last $500 of lottery tickets. And and that doesn't usually go well, right? So people are, and this is human nature. Who doesn't want easy money? Everybody wants easy money. But even if you get lucky the first time, just like going to Vegas, you get lucky, what happens? Most people stay in Vegas too long. They go take that winning and go spend it. So the key is, like, I think it's great for anybody to be looking at NFTs, looking at crypto. But if you're coming with the mindset, I'm going to get rich quick with no effort, you're fooling yourself. You're fooling yourself. There's so much opportunity here, but take the time. But that takes discipline, right? Take the time to get to know the space, just like you guys are doing. You guys are doing the research, sharing it with your community, helping people to feel more educated as they begin this. Of course, you have to be adventurous, but you can't do that when it's your last, your rent. You can't do it with your rent money or mortgage payment. You want to look at this as a long tail opportunity. And, that is trickier because it's going to ask you to read or research or do the homework. And no, who likes homework? Nobody. I don't like homework, but I know that if I don't do my homework, I'm going to pay a price that's higher than I want to pay. So just think about the price you want to pay.
One thing that I've noticed with the NFT market, especially that I've been kind of harking on about, which relates to what you're saying about staying in the casino too long, you end up losing that money, is that the NFT space is so young, and there's a lot of people that did make a lot of money off of a lot of just anybody that was in the NFT space 6 months ago did well.
Yeah.
Well, shouldn't say anybody, but a lot of people, did make a lot of money. And my attitude has always been, let's see who's around in another, 1 or 2 years.
Correct.
Because people
NFT, crypto, trading, like what's the common denominator? Those who have capital get to live another day. So if you are not being completely respectful of the fact that you are in the game, you can't be here in 6 months if you don't be frugal.
Sorry to interrupt, but the driver that is making those people make all those that fast money, it's a curse, because what happens is that you double up your money, 10K, 20K. Woo. Double it up again, 20 to 40K. Oh, I'm doing really well. Next thing you know, you're at 150K. I'm ready to double it up, become a millionaire, and you completely fail. You lose it all.
I was very lucky to interview Tom Sosnoff. He's on my podcast. We just dropped it today. And I was asking Tom what the most important advice is. And he's been literally in the market every day for 8 to 12 hours a day for 40 years. So this is a man you guys might want to all listen to, who's listening to me now. He said the key is to keep your size small. That's the key to living another day. So for those who would take that 150, Martin, and double it, that's a person that's not keeping their size small, right?
Sure. It's a huge problem, though, because that's the mentality that made them that wealth in the beginning. So it's reinforcing that bad behavior.
Yes. So what is that behavior? What's operating there? If we're talking about the emotions, it's called the green-eyed monster greed, right? Because and this is part of what happens too, especially when we win, especially for men. When men have a win, their testosterone levels go up. And guess what happens? You start to see physiologically through a new lens. And that lens is, I am the master of the universe.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No mistakes. And that is what happens physiologically. No guy's sitting there choosing it. It is biologically unfurling with that rise in testosterone. So you got to be really clear that you are going to have that happen. You are suddenly not neutral now. You have to say, okay, I just had a big win. I got to put the brakes on and get myself back to center. Go do something that allows that testosterone to be expelled from you so you can go back to your trading desk as neutral as possible.
Planet Zero has an interesting question here. She says, because the NFT market can also be much younger. So there's a lot of
yes, sure.
high school, college people investing, do you have any specific advice for them when interacting with a younger generation of traders?
Well, I think it's wonderful. I mean, I think what I'd love to say to those who come into the NFT space is don't necessarily limit yourself just to that space. Like that, if you guys can understand that space, you can understand all the spaces. Like become familiar, even if you don't want to become an expert in it, if you don't want to trade stocks, fine. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more available to you. Expose yourself to all of it, because what if it isn't NFTs for you? What if it's crypto? And what if it's not crypto? Maybe it's options, and maybe it's not options. Like, look around. There is so much available to you. There's so many incredible people out there who are saying, even Sosnoff, he says one of the things that bothers him about the financial industry is how old school it says to be passive, like that's been kind of the mantra that the finance advisors have, like, let us do it for you. We're the expert. And he's just like, no, it's available to all of us. That he was happy about that meme stock situation for the fact that it made all these young people plow in a way they never came in before. So this is an opportunity for you who are young to educate yourself. This is a fascinating world. It is the most exciting, exhilarating, intellectual, the most brilliant people in the world are in the world of finance. Start to investigate. Find out what your sweet spot is. And if it's NFTs, well, start reading about the market in general, because there are things there that will teach you what is here, what's going on. And there are these moments in history where things, you look back to the tulip craze that happened in Amsterdam, how many years ago? That has a lot of the same vibe as the NFT space. Like, learn from history, learn what's happened before you. NFTs are new, but they're not new, because mankind's always creating a new, like, get rich quick. And if you become the person who says, I'm not going to worry about getting rich quick, I'm going to learn how to be the wisest operator in this space, you're going to be miles ahead of everybody around you.
Which is the exact, me and Martin sat down when we started this, and exactly what you just said is what we went through. We said we're walking into a space of get rich quick and hype, and we're going to be the exactly what you just said. And it's funny how quickly the space is dying out of that tulip phase and turning to these business, or the projects that are running as businesses in what you said. Now there is we're getting inundated with questions, but one question here that's that I thought it caught my eye a little bit. I don't quite understand it, but it says it's from Planet 012, and she said, listening to your story about therapy versus coaching and how that has helped you, would you say that many people approach investing from places of anxiety or fear that is important to recognize or combat?
So it sounds like the question is, are people coming into whatever they're doing with fear and anxiety? Is that what I'm hearing?
I guess so.
I mean, who doesn't have fear and anxiety? I mean, we just all lived through a pandemic, right? Now we have global, we have a war in the Ukraine. Like, there's so much every day that every human being has to be with that is freaking scary. Like, we have global warming that's at epidemic proportions. I mean, we have a lot to be afraid of. So I just want to say to those who are feeling that anxiousness, like, of course, like, you would be kind of like a sociopath if you weren't a little nervous based on what's going down and what we've all just lived through. And there are still beautiful things. And I think this comes down to being a really good steward of what you're exposed to. really, I'm an empath, so I feel things very deeply. I can physically feel pain in my toe if, like, my friend hits the door with their toe. I'll feel it in my toe. That's what an empath sometimes will have happen to them. So I had to learn really early how to be careful of what I was exposed to. I had to really turn the volume down. I have to be really careful now. I have no television. I stopped having a television over 20 years ago. That changed a lot for the better because I wasn't constantly being inundated with bad news. So filter what comes in. I'm not telling you to put your head in the sand, but we're not built, again, biologically, physiologically, to withstand thousands of bad news stories all day, tragedies, thousands of exposures to them a day. We're not built for that. We can have an empathy overload. So be mindful of that. And then just say, okay, yeah, I have anxiety. How do I manage that? First, don't feel ashamed. Don't feel like you're the only one, because you're not. And then how do you cope with it? You have to, I believe, start to put your shift on what you do have. And that would be the experience of gratitude. And I think for a lot of people, sometimes for men, it can sound like, something airy-fairy, like, oh, freaking gratitude. But I'll tell you, you want to have a shift in consciousness, you want to have a shift in your perspective, when you start to really pay attention to what you do have versus what you don't have, that too will just completely turn yourself and your mindset around. But that takes practice, and it does take discipline. And that's something I am gonna, speak to for everybody listening here. I have a complimentary ebook I'm gonna offer to your audience, traderdiscipline.com. That's the website they'll go to. They'll sign up and they'll get a copy of my free ebook. And that discipline is so critical. Whether you're a trader or not, this book is still gonna teach you, like, discipline is effort. It asks effort of you. It's not, it's also a practice. It's not one and done. Effort, discipline has to be practiced every day. Some days you're going to be great at it. Some days you're not going to be great at it. Don't beat yourself up for it. Just get back again. What are your goals? What is this that you're doing this for? Whether you go to the gym, whether you're trying to eat healthy, whether you're trying to, better yourself or educate yourself, you have to realize that your gas tank has to be kept full so that you can make those trips. They're like trips from your car. You want to go to the market, you want to go to the beach, you're going to need gas in the tank for all of those. So I think it's just pat yourself on the back that if you survive this pandemic, never mind physically, but emotionally, you're one of the rare ones. So be proud of yourself that you survived it. Now you're trying to better yourself, educate yourself. Great. Don't put a gun to your head and say, I have to do it in a month, a week. And if you're financially in a hard space, which some people might be, don't think this is the way that that's going to solve your financial issues. Go and get one of those jobs that is probably not paying as much as it should, to just have some income, and do this in your spare time. Do this as a hobby. Do this at night instead of, maybe watching freaking whatever that Netflix show is now that's popular. Fill in the blank. Like, don't watch Netflix. Go study NFTs for 2 hours a night. Go study crypto. I'm reading Anthony Scaramucci's book now, How I Learned to Stop Worrying About Bitcoin. And, I don't have the title exact, but like, it's an amazing book. And he talks about his own blind spot about that. And then he was like, oh shit, I got it. I do have to really understand this. And now he's like this huge advocate of Bitcoin. So if a man like that, who came from a very different perspective, was able to open his eyes, you can do it. I can do it.
Excellent. So you said that you had 5 traits or
practices. Yeah.
I got one of them very clearly, which was to have realistic long game expectations. And I did not catch the next 4. You might have already talked about them, but
I didn't tell you my 5 practices because what I was speaking to was specific to traders. But here are my 5 practices that can be extrapolated into specifically traders or anybody for that matter. Practice one is called self-responsibility. What that means is taking 100% ownership for where and what your life looks like right now. Not blame, but responsibility. If you don't take 100% responsibility for where you are right now, your ability to transform it is going to be nil. Because of different things that I lived through when I was young, that was the first practice that really changed my life. I saw myself as a victim. I saw myself as a victim of circumstance, of life, of the different caretakers I had in my growing up. And I just felt like somebody owed me. And that was blocking me from freedom. And that is the number one practice. It is most people here take responsibility. They hear it as take blame. It's not my fault so-and-so did this to me. This is not about blame. That happened. Now what? It shifts your consciousness to, I'm in charge of what I do with where I am today for the rest of my life. That's practice one. Practice two, self and other empathy. What does that mean? That means not beating yourself up for all the mistakes you possibly are able to see about the choices you made so far. If you're going to keep beating yourself up, that is not going to get you also to the goal you want to create for yourself. Learn how to have compassion for yourself. Okay, that is a shitty thing I did and it was costly, but I didn't know better. So now I'm going to forgive myself and start to operate in another way. First, it starts with ourselves. If you don't learn how to have empathy for yourself, how the heck are you going to be able to extend that to anybody else in your life? It costs oxygen or needs. A lot of people don't even know what their basic needs are. So a lot of the coaching work that I do with people is helping them identify what are your basic needs. If you're not getting your basic needs met, you're not going to have oxygen in your tank. And then when somebody else comes along, a friend or a colleague or a child, and they are like, I'm having a lousy day, you can't afford to help them out and give them empathy because your whole tank is dry. Just like on a plane, they say, don't put the oxygen mask on anybody, help anybody else before you do it to yourself. So needs are oxygen. That's practice two. Practice three is emotional non-resistance. That's what I call it. What does that mean? That means learning how to be with hard to be with feelings in a place where there is no stakes at hand. So that means if you discover as you begin to do any kind of work in crypto or NFTs or trading, that every time there's a loss, you like heart races, you start to sweat, you feel like you're going to throw up. What I want you to do is step away from your trading desk and go be with that emotion when there's no high stakes situation. Let yourself recreate it in your imagination and allow your body to get triggered so that you can learn. Because if you let yourself feel hard to be with feelings, do you know what happens over time? They start to dissipate, just like waves on the shore. Once a wave, no matter how big a wave is, it will dissipate once it moves through its sequencing. Most people haven't learned how to be with the sequencing of their emotions, and they still are triggered by them. That practice teaches people how to ride the wave into shore before so they can respond instead of react. That's a very important skill, I think, for anybody who's in finance, because you're going to get hit with volatile emotions. You better learn how to be with them and not react from them. Practice.
And just to provide a little like examples, just for people to understand it better, what would be an example of you not, sitting with those emotions? What happens? Like, what are the consequences of not developing the practice that you're talking about?
I'll answer it with the name of a movie star, Will Smith.
Yeah.
Will Smith was triggered. And it sounds to me, based on what little bit I know about his story, is that he speaks even in his biography that the most traumatizing, impressionable moment was a moment where he saw his father hurt his mother. So he spoke about that being like one of his pivotal moments. I truly believe that moment, he completely was consumed by his desire to protect his wife, probably similar to how he couldn't have protected his mom when he was little. It's all speculation on my part, but he hears this man saying something that he feels will hurt his wife's feelings, and he wants to protect her. But he got completely taken over by that emotion, and he didn't let himself just go through that. He was probably just having a flood of emotions, but he didn't let himself work his way through them. He reacted. And now look at the cost. The night that should have been the best night of his life is going to be forever tainted by him slapping another human being. Like, what? That's what happens. That's the cost. If we let our emotions take us on a leash, we have to learn how to put them on a leash and learn how to hold ourselves back and not react, because the reactions are always going to be costly. It breaks my heart for him. I feel he's a good man, but he lost control that night because he never learned how to be hard to be with feelings without, it's hard to have a flood of emotions come upon you in a trade. It's very hard. So you got to become self-aware enough to be like, oh my God, I'm being triggered, right? And it happens to me to this day. I have my triggers. They still happen. All that's different now is I'm aware of my triggers. I know when I start to feel the cold wash of shame that I'm not in a place of lucidity. I have to stop everything, the phone, the emails, and I got to take myself for a little walk and get myself back to center. If you're not in center, you're going to have costly costs, and you don't want
especially in connection to trading. Maybe just a couple examples there would be like things that I've experienced is, imagine when you're in a trade and it breaks your stop, but you don't stop out. And so what do? You add,
Yep.
and you become deeper in the red, and then those emotions start to trigger you, and you're unable to, what should have been an easy let go of the trade turns into something where, no, it's like, I have to win this. I'm just going to keep averaging down. I'm going to,
because your identity,
as Ricky would say, you break all your rules.
Yep.
And those are examples, I think, from a trading perspective of where, if you haven't put in the time and effort to deal with those emotions, those are the type of reactions that you will have.
Definitely.
Is that you will end up hurting yourself financially, because you will make bad decisions in the worst moments.
Totally. And at the beginning of what you stated just now, Martin, you spoke at the beginning about, like, in that moment, it breaks your stop loss and you don't do what you are supposed to be doing. That's when the emotion's already happening. It's not just when it's like wild and crazy and you're in a cold sweat. It happened in that moment where you made a conscious choice to not do what you know you're supposed to do. I would love everybody who can relate to that to just consider what informed that choice. And 9 times out of 10, what you'll hear is, I didn't want to be wrong. How come? I say, don't judge yourself. What is being wrong mean to you? What do you make it mean? Because you must not make that be okay if you can't be it. So what is going on? What's the story that you tell yourself when you are wrong? Because that story is what you're avoiding in that moment that you don't do what you know you should do. Because for you, it's actually better to not feel that way about yourself than it is to lose all your freaking money.
Yeah, agreed. And we got a couple of comments on that in the YouTube there, and there's one person that says it's very similar to sports betting, in that aspect, which I can guarantee that everything you've just said spans across the board in life. and go on.
No, I wanted to throw in my own advice, being not a pro trader, but an experienced trader, is that Kim spoke to this, and it's so true, is that if you want the life hack or the hack of how to combat this, is trade smaller. Like, use smaller amounts, trade smaller, because then you can handle those emotional, you probably speak better to it, but you're able to react and handle those emotional triggers much better when you don't have all of that financial, high stake, in the middle of the trade.
Even when you learn how to surf, you slowly start with small waves. Like the first time I went to a girls' summer camp kind of surf thing, and we had, we were on 1-2 foot waves, right? And that day, a storm came in unexpectedly, and those waves very quickly turned into 5-foot waves, and it was mayhem. I actually almost drowned that day. Right? Why? Because I wasn't ready for a 5-foot wave. So are you exposing yourself to 5-foot waves when you're a beginner trader? What are you doing? You can't handle a 5-foot wave. You're barely staying on the board. So that's also an expression of self-compassion, self-empathy, right? If you're expecting yourself to be able to handle a big wave when you're just learning how to stay on the board, that is not in reality.
It's one thing that I worry about often is in the stock market and in any sort of market, things can get away from you very quickly. Whereas something that I'm seeing in the NFT market is that people can get in from the get-go quite out of their depth. So if there's a company that releases and the price of that company is just rising, and it gets to a point where usually a stock that squeezes will go to a certain point and it's like beyond belief, whereas an NFT can go 50 times that price. So people sometimes their starting point is like so far beyond their depth, and that's why me and Martin were like, we need to, like, this is your whole ethos, and it's like, it's what we're trying to combat, is because there's so many people who are making a lot of money, but they're starting so far beyond their depth. Like, there's even projects out there just to get one. It's like, $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million. And it's for a starting position. That's it's not like buying a $5 stock.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Plus, it also possibly will include people who haven't ever lived or navigated large amounts of money. And if you haven't taken any time to investigate what is your relationship to money, then that's going to be a costly place to learn. And this is why we hear of those who are lottery winners or very young men who go into sports who get these huge contracts. In a certain amount of time afterwards, the money's gone. They're bankrupt. They had all their relatives talk them into lending them money for investments that were garbage. Like, why do people who get a lot of money right up front lose it within a fairly short time? Because their temperature set point is different than now what their bank account says. And we do like homeostasis, human beings. So our whole unconscious will just get us back to what we know, which is probably a lot less money. So I would also say, if you've made a lot of money and have teased unexpectedly, do some due diligence around your relationship to money, scarcity, abundance. What if everybody in your tribe is still, potentially middle class, and here you are with millions? You might feel like they're going to not be your friend anymore. They may not be trustworthy, or all these things can happen that can skew our relationship to money. And that also, I think, potentially gets in people's way. Some people like tall poppy syndrome. You must know that, right? What is that about? Like, you've got to always be at the same level as the crowd, right? You don't want to stand out too much. So some people will feel uncomfortable. I know when I first made a lot of money, when I went into the finance firm that I was working for, I was crying because I felt like, what if I lose it? What if I make a mistake? Is it okay to buy this expensive lipstick? Like, it was so disorientating because I was raised by a single mom who struggled to put food on the table. So I felt like I was completely out of my element. It was very nerve-wracking for me. Not that it will be for everybody, but it potentially will make you, again, it'll distort your current choices. So be aware that money can also have this huge kaleidoscope of beliefs about ourselves and people around us.
We are going to be running out of time, so I just have a couple more questions from the audience that I want to point out before we end this.
You got it.
First is just a counterpoint to what we had mentioned about trading small. It was very accurately pointed out by pro trader Ricky Analog that that doesn't mean not to take the small trades seriously.
Oh, good point. That's such a great point. So true.
And then the second final question that I want to end this conversation on, which is again from Planet Zero, excellent question. Would you say the current go to the moon culture is toxic?
Well, I don't like to make anything wrong. So I think instead what I'll say, it's misleading. It's misleading. So, and look, I think part of what makes it so appealing to young people and why that meme stocks, kind of took off was because it's fun, it's playful, it's cartoon-ish, right?
It's a rallying cry.
It's a rallying cry of like, oh my God, finance maybe could be fun, right? But it's deadly serious. So great that you want to look at this with a new perspective, but just ask yourself, is that mentality of just hold it forever make any logical sense? Like, what in life is permanent? Nothing. So your NFT or your meme stock that's the one thing that's permanent. Like, if you spend a little time in one other culture, the United States, we're only a couple of 100 years old. You go to Europe, you go to Israel, you start going to China, like time moves pretty quick. We are just these little blips on the screen. You really think AMC is going to be here for like till the end of time? It's just not going to happen, people. So it's not healthy, toxic, probably, but
It has its uses.
Well, look, it got a whole bunch of people into finance that never were going to come in otherwise. So
Very true.
hopefully their losses were small enough to not crush them. And if anything, now it makes them realize, maybe this is a world I can learn and educate myself on and have a new potential career. I like that it encouraged people to come into this place because I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that potentially could do really well, but you got to realize this is hard.
For me personally, I like the term because it gives me a sense of camaraderie with a group of people. Like, we're doing this together. Like, we're on this spaceship together.
Yes.
And even though it's kind of silly and we have to be realizing this is real money that we're talking about and you need to have a real strategy. At the same time, I like the idea that we're all on this train together.
Definitely.
And I think that aspect of it for me is fun.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
awesome.
think for a lot of people.
Well, look, you're not isolated. A lot of people who do the markets are isolated. And I think they put themselves at a disadvantage. If you're with people that have your back and that want to see you succeed and you want to succeed and you vetted them, how can you not go the distance? Because you're going to get a bunch of your needs met, like encouragement, like camaraderie, like community. I mean, you're going to be able to go so much further if you have that environment. And it feels like you guys have really created that, which is really beautiful. And I think really wise, because this is a tricky landscape. So be with people who are interested and being curious. Not if you come across people that are the know-it-alls, including yourself, be cautious. Nobody knows anything. We're all just making our best guesses every day. So
Agreed.
No, keep that humility for yourself and look for that in the people you associate yourself with. Do they have humility? If they act like they got it all figured out, I would be questioning, do they? Probably
For
not.
sure. Well, time is really getting away from us, and it always does because we love chatting. But thank you a million for coming on. My top of my screen is just been going bing, 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 bing with different servers and people asking questions and saying different things. So already it's an aspect of the NFT market that nobody in the NFT market's seen. So we're super excited to be exposing people in this market to you and what you do. And I can guarantee you that 95% of people in this market are going through it on to quite a high degree. So, you know, we will announce some things and some collaborations a little bit further in the future on, you know, being able to bring some of those people into the Wall Street coach business and potentially work with some of your team. So we're super excited, and again, very, very grateful for you giving us your time and your knowledge more than anything.
Thank you. It's fun to be here. Thanks.
Before everybody goes, please like and subscribe this video. Subscribe to our channel.
That's right.
Kim will be with us as Alpha Traders Country Club grows. She is a member, and we will be using our tokenomics system to also allow members to use those tokens to get time with coaching sessions with Kim and her team. So this is going to be a long-term partnership and a very valuable resources. And we really do love that you're with us. Thank you so much, Kim.
You're so welcome. And just friendly reminder for them to go to traderdiscipline.com, sign up for those for that ebook, and just let me know.
I've posted that all in the YouTube already and all in the Discord already. So the people are already jumping in on that. So I'm excited.
I'm so glad. I'm so good. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a beautiful day and good luck with the whole escalation of it all. I know it'll be fantastic.